It went up to 150. He said it's going to be $65 a barrel in the next 4 or 5 months. I said, well, put a date on it. He says next 3 to 6 months. And he said they're going to discover a big oil field in Indonesia. They did. They're going to find some stuff in Russia. I've internationally seen some of that confirmed. Lindsay Williams, oil company executive, called up that he worked with. He was on the board as their chaplain. Called him up and said, we're going to kill you if you don't shut up. And he said, well, what am I allowed to say? And he knew with this level, they're not joking. And he said, well, you can, just tell them this. And then Lindsay came on and told us, and that was right. Lindsay Williams, great to have you on.
Alex, it is so nice to know one or more of the elite and to be able to say all of these things, not because Lindsay Williams knows it. See, I'm just like you are. I put my britches on every morning just like you do. The elite call me, and, of course, when I was threatened, I decided to make friends with him. He became polite. I asked him some questions. And, Alex, I had the privilege of being on with you on July the 28th. I look back on my date book here. Who would have ever guessed on July the 28th that it would have gone from $140 approximately a barrel of oil to just a few moments ago before we went on the air, crude oil was $67.36, less than one half. Dubai is now in big trouble. Everything he said about the Arab world has taken place. Let me just briefly go down the predictions that not a prediction really. Because
now, let's be clear. They were threatening you because you were exposing that they basically have unlimited oil. They found huge reserves. You worked there. That was all on record and confirmed. Again, folks, this is gospel. This is documented. They were sick. Your video was #1 on Google for months on end, tens of millions of views a week. They called up and said, shut up. But then they told you more. Go ahead.
Yeah, for 3 years' time, I lived with these people. I had the privilege of doing what very few people on the face of the earth ever have an opportunity to do, and that is, instead of just hearing about them and reading someone else's book, Alex, I had the privilege, by God's grace and providence, to actually live with the elite of the world on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline for 3 years' time. Then I wrote my book, Energy Non-Crisis, and for the past 35 years, I have known that there was a line out there, and that if I crossed it, I'd be in trouble. And twice in 35 years, they've contacted me. The first time was back in 1984, and they said, you got to quit saying certain things, and I did. And then the middle of June of this year, 2008, they contacted me again and said, Jacqueline, you cannot say certain things anymore, and if you do, we're going to have to do this, that, and the other. Well, after we finally came to an agreement, I said to the gentleman, how you been doing? How's your family? How you getting along? Where have you been living? I haven't seen the man for 25 years, but he knows everything that goes on behind closed doors, and he became friendly. And for the next 45 minutes, he told me the following. Let me just enumerate them for the listening audience. Crude oil will go to $50 a barrel. That was his first thing. He said it will happen. I would have never guessed that. I was talking about $200 a barrel oil, and he said it's going to $50 a barrel. I'm still sitting here startled. Secondly, he said the Arab world is going into a state of bankruptcy. Dubai right now has had to stop the building of the largest world-class skyscraper in the city of Dubai because they don't have the finances to complete it, and unless they can find somebody to help underwrite it, the world-class city there in Dubai is in trouble. The next thing he said, there's going to be a financial collapse in the United States of America that is going to be so great that it will take years to recover. Then, Alex, I remembered one thing that I didn't mention on your show back on July the 28th. When we had finished our conversation, this man advised me to prepare, and he said, I would suggest you go to the mission field and leave America.
Stay there. I want to hear this huge development when we get back. Ladies and gentlemen, no one was saying oil was going to $50 a barrel but Lindsay Williams. No one. And he never came up with wild things in the past. And then he was proven right. It's incredible. Stay with us. Pastor Lindsay Williams is our guest. He always talked about the giant Prudhoe Bay oil reserves, how they were hidden. That's even come out in mainstream news decades after he talked about it, more than what's in Saudi Arabia. And his video became #1, just an hour presentation he gave, #1 on Google Video for month after month. It was in the top 5 every day, but routinely #1, millions a day watching it. People all over the street. I was hearing him talk about it in cafes, and I was hearing buzz on the street, like Loose Change or other big viral videos. And so this oil executive he'd worked with called up and said, look, shut up or it's over. And then Lindsay was smart, and because he knew him and had worked on their board for years, said, well, what can I talk about? And Lindsay, finish up with the point you'd forgotten to cover here with us.
Alex, it's not Lindsay Williams saying these things. The elite, whom I happened to have rubbed shoulders with for 3 years' time on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline, when I wrote my book, Energy Non-Crisis, 35 years ago, some of these people still stay in touch with me, just strictly out of courtesy of the work that I did for them as chaplain on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline. And as a result of that, the things that I've been saying for 35 years, every single one of them, without exception, have come to place, not because Lindsay Williams knew this, Alex. I just have to stress to your listening audience, everything that happens in government, everything that takes place in the financial world, what happens with crude oil, Saudi Arabia, all the Arabs, every bit of this is planned in advance. Everything that you say on your program, Alex, has been planned by somebody in the elite behind closed doors. And folks, I've got to say, it's such a privilege to be on Alex Jones' show and to even be invited to be here. I consider it to be an honor. And I must say to you, please, you listen to Alex Jones every single day. Don't you miss one of his programs. You've got to hear what he's telling you. Sometimes this day and time, things are happening so fast that unless you catch it in the past 24 hours' time, you're in trouble. So let me say again, what you hear me say, the predictions that I am making today did not come from Lindsay Williams, some dream, or not sleeping good because I ate too many hamburgers before I went to bed. This came from the elite themselves who called me, threatened me, and said, Lindsay, this is what's going to happen out of politeness. We're telling you these things. $50 a barrel crude oil. All right, I'm going to make the prediction now exactly as this man did. You write it down, take it to the bank. Can you imagine someone who got in on the futures market of oil when it was $140 a barrel and had been willing to take the word of the elite that called me on the phone? Can you imagine?
No, people laughed at you. They didn't believe you. They didn't go cash in on it. They could have just made unbelievable fortunes. Now we went to break, and you were going over the predictions, the things he told you were going to happen, and there was one point he was telling you, get out of the country. Finish up with that.
Yeah, I happen to remember that after I was on your program last time, Alex, and you'd asked me all the things he had said. And, of course, over about a 45-minute conversation with this gentleman, one thing I remembered when we came down to the end of the conversation, and I said, now, my intentions really are, for myself, of course, I've been a minister now for 50 years, pastored a church for 12 years in Hollywood, Florida. I was a chaplain on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline, and I said, my heart is in the ministry. And I think my wife and I and family have been talking about going back into the ministry and going to the mission field. Well, usually that means a foreign mission field somewhere, and he asked me where, and I mentioned to him. And this I thought of after I was on your last program. He said, I would advise you to prepare, and he said, I think it would be a great idea to leave America and go to the mission field. And I remembered that after I was on your last program, Alex. He was advising me to get ready for the inevitable because he knew what was going to take place.
Now, to be clear, they are imploding the price of oil to bankrupt the Arabs and to bankrupt the whole world while the big central banks are energized with cash and liquidity. They're not in trouble. They can then go buy up the entire world economy when it collapses and build that new world order banking system and that trilateral world system they've now announced.
That is exactly right. Alex, you could not have put it in any better words. Everything you just said is what I surmised from what this man told me. And looking over it, that's exactly what they intend to do. They'll own all the banks in America. They'll own all the airlines. They will own basically most of the houses in the United States of America because of collapse of the real estate market. And by the time they get through, the elite are basically going to own everything. The people will be slaves in their hands. You've said you aren't going to be, and neither will I. But they'll try. This is exactly what their intention is.
Unbelievable. Lindsay, let's come back and talk more about specifically what he said, because months ago you laid that out, what they're planning to set up, how they're planning to bankrupt the world. This is it, the birth of the New World Order. Lindsay Williams, Inside Info. Stay with us.
We're on the march. The empire's on the run. Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.